here, and this is the first in my tomato series of videos. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the end uses of tomatoes and what I do with them once I harvest them. So tomatoes are a very important food for canning. The acidity in tomatoes makes them a good addition to just about any canning recipe, except for jams. Don't want to put tomatoes in there. So I'm going to talk about three things that I make. The first is, this is a little jar that has canned tomatoes and carrots in it. That's all, just stewed tomatoes and carrots. And I puree them, and then I thicken them just by cooking the water out of them. And then I jar them up in these little jars. And this here can be used as a soup base, as an addition to rice or stir fry or anything really that you're trying to hide vegetables in. If you're like me, you like to try to hide vegetables from your kids. Guilty as charged, and this is a really good way of doing that. Sometimes I will just open this, mix it in with the water for cooking rice or anything like that, and then they think they're just eating rice and no vegetables, but the vegetables are in there. This here is one of my big tomato jars. All that's in here is stewed tomatoes and 1 teaspoon of sugar and 1 teaspoon of salt, and that is all the preservatives, and these are so tasty. This jar here would be enough to do a big pot of soup or a big pot of chili or spaghetti sauce, and that is what I generally tend to use them for. And the other thing that I make with tomatoes, which I don't have any left unfortunately, is salsa, and it is one of my favorite things. I use it in my eggs, I use it in my recipes, and it's very versatile as well. And so this here is made to for a weekend. I have 1 jar of my tomatoes and 1 jar of my puree left, and that's pretty good. So I know that I got through the winter with all the way up to May with tomatoes preserved to spare. So I'm going to plant at least as many tomatoes this year as I did last year, and because my tomatoes won't be ready to harvest for another few months, I'm going to try to actually increase the volume of tomatoes that I plant this year in order to get me through till the new crop is ready to come off. So this is the kind of tomatoes that I used last year. It's called the Market Miracle. It is from a company called Hawthorne Farm out of Minto, Ontario. They do open stock heirloom tomato, all vegetable seeds, and I highly recommend them. However, I did hear that they are also sold out this year. So if you have never grown tomatoes before, there are 2 common types. One is determinate and one is indeterminate. Determinate is the one I recommend. That means it is going to be a compact plant more so than the indeterminate. Indeterminates are sprawlers. If you are growing in a pot or in a small space, you're going to want to go with the determinate. They do need staking, they will need support, but they will not need nearly as much as the indeterminate will. If you do not have seeds at this time, this is May 24 of 2020, I saw some today at Brywood. If you are looking for tomato seeds or any seeds for that matter, try there. You can go with starter plants. That's an excellent option as well. If you do not have either of those things, if you go to the grocery store and buy a tomato and scoop out the seeds and put them in a bowl of water and let them sit for about 3 days, at the end of that, the seeds themselves will have fallen to the bottom of the bowl, and you can actually rinse off all the jelly that comes with them and let them dry, and you will have tomato seeds that you can use. And that is actually called the fermentation method of saving seeds. We're going to be doing a video on that in this series later on in the summer when we get to that point, but that is the method that I used. I do have like 3 or 4 left in this pouch, but the majority of the tomato seeds that I'm going to be planting are seeds that I saved myself using the fermentation method last year. Here is the row that I'm going to be planting my tomatoes in. I've got my twine here, my mallet that I use to hammer in the stakes, and my scissors to cut the twine. This is my tomato row that I marked a few videos back. I did add a top dressing of compost to this row a couple of months ago. So first things first, I'm going to clear it, and then I'm going to build my trellis, and then I'm going to plant my tomatoes. Alright, so beside me here you can see that I have the first of 2 tripods, and the plan is to make a whole row of tripods of that design and then run cross members across the whole row and tie those on. So I don't actually know if I can do this one-handed, but I'm going to try. I've got my stakes ready there, and first thing I'm going to do is plunge my trowel in, make a little hole. Pop that guy in there. If I was doing this with 2 hands, it'd be easier. I'm going to take my mallet and hammer him in. I'm going to do another one over here, and then I'm going to do another one over here. And I just wanted to show you guys this, how nice the soil is. That is nice, deep soil that I am extremely proud of, that I built last year on top of my lawn. If you have not seen that video, it is called Easiest Way to Start a Garden. Okay, so I've taken my 3 stakes and I am malleting them into some kind of pyramid-like structure. And then the next step is just going to be tying them with twine. And that's what it looks like when it's finished. It's important to get the twine pretty tight. This thing is pretty sturdy. You're gonna have a lot of weight of tomatoes supported by that. Stopping for a beer break. So my cat is having a standoff with a snake in my garden. That is a big snake, or is it eating something? That snake is eating my toad that I had before. And Ivory doesn't like it. Is that toad still alive? Ivory, sort him out. The snake does not like Ivory watching. But I don't really like the snake eating my toad. And it looks like Ivory has decided to leave the snake alone. She's wandering off. Good girl, Ivory, because he's part of nature. Did you get her down, buddy? Good job. There he goes. He's leaving. Probably gonna actually stay there for a while in the sun with a belly full of toad. The circle of life. Okay, so I almost forgot I was making a video there because I got caught up in the snake thing. But I did finish the row of upright pyramids, and I've started along with the cross members to bind them all together. All right, so it has been a very long and very productive day. What I have here is my tomato trellis upright, and I'm gonna walk along and describe what happens with it in 1 second. So as I mentioned at the top of the video, tomatoes need a lot of support. I do not like tomato cages. They do work if that's all you have. They do work, especially in a pot or something like that. If you have a garden and you plan on growing tomatoes every year, I recommend some kind of setup like this. So the uprights are old deck wood from the railing on the deck that my husband tore down last year. And the cross members are just sticks that I have found in my travels, in my walks in the park and stuff like that. And the reason why we need them is because when the tomato plants go in, you need that framework, that structure, to tie the actual plants to. Otherwise, your tomato fruits themselves are going to end up sitting too close to the ground or even touching the ground from their own weight. And you don't want that. You want to keep them up. So what will happen is I will grow them up the upright, and when they get taller than the upright, I will tie them along the cross piece. And so I've got 11 uprights. I've got about 25-foot row. So I think what I'm going to try to do is put in approximately 24 tomato seeds, and that is going to be my framework to hold them up. Alright, so on the topic of whether to start seeds indoors or not with tomatoes, yes, it is an advantage if you have success with it. The main advantage is that your tomatoes are a certain level of hardiness when you move them out. So if you do have starts growing, the first thing you're going to do is take them out on a rainy day for 1 hour, put them in a shady spot, out of the wind and out of the direct rain, and let them acclimatize. Then the next day, 2 hours. Then the next day, maybe 4 hours. Gradually work them into a windier and hotter position and a longer stretch, because what you're trying to do is build up exposure to the elements. That is known as hardening off. So if you do have starter plants, that is the process by which you harden them off, and then you eventually will plant them in the garden after all the frost risk is past, which I'm going to say ordinarily, this is May 2-4 weekend in southwestern Ontario. The old rule of thumb was that we are past the frost point by this point, but we just had 7 days, I think it was, of frost warning, and there may be people out there who are new to gardening and who put their tomato starts out already before that frost came, and they may be sitting in a position of having to start over. If that is the case, don't worry about it. Or there could be people like me who have been doing tomato starts for years, up to even 1,500 at a time when I was running starts for the Hope Starts Junior Gardeners program. This is the only one I have right here. This is the only one of mine that survived. And I'm gonna go ahead and say that if your tomato starts died, you can go ahead and forgive yourself for that right now, because this is 2020 and all bets are off. Nobody could have predicted that frost we had. Nobody could have predicted this pandemic. Nobody could have predicted the homeschooling challenges that we would face. I'm gonna go ahead and admit that mine died from neglect, other than that guy. And so, you know what? It is what it is. So I originally intended to do about half starts and half seeds to do an experiment to see which would thrive better, because last year, believe it or not, the seeds that I direct sowed into the ground grew taller and stronger than the ones that I started in the house. So that is the plan. So I only have one starter plant. I'm going to put that right in the middle so we can track how it does over the course of the year. Like I said, I have my Market Miracle tomato seeds, and I also have the seeds that I saved by fermentation process last year. So I'm actually going to mix those in with the packet that I have, which was the parent plant anyways, and then I'm going to take these sticks and I'm going to go mark out 24 evenly spaced spots, and then I'm going to put my seeds in where the sticks are. Okay, so I've got my 24 marker stakes in the ground, and I'm going to go ahead and plant out my seeds, and I'm going to go, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At that 5th one there is where I'm going to plant my starter plant that I have, and we'll see at the end of the year which one does better. So I'm going to actually do 2 seeds per marker. Not sure if you can see those. There may even be 3 there, but I'm just going to cover those up, and they're by the marker, so I know, and I'm going to do the same thing down the whole row. So the advantage of using the egg carton is that I can just pop this right out, It is now completely deteriorating. These are my little basil plants that I'm gonna intercrop with my tomatoes. See that little guy there? Cute, huh? Got a bit of cardboard with it. It's not gonna hurt anything. Doing this one-handed. So I'm just gonna dig out a little hole, put them in there, and then, well, I guess I should say put her in there. Right, baby? You're a mama, aren't ya? You're gonna have lots of beautiful baby tomatoes for me, aren't ya? I like to talk to my plants. I think it helps to put good energy on them. That's just me. Okay, so I used up all the tomato plants that I have. Last thing I'm gonna do before I call it a day is plant out my basil. I like to intercrop those with my tomatoes. A, because they're delicious, and B, because it's supposed to be a good companion plant for tomatoes. Okay, so it looks like I've got about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 basil plants. So I'm just going to space those evenly and plant them out along the row, and that is going to be the end of the video. All right, so that is the little basil plant just coming up in the garden. That is it for today. And I see there's a lot of ants by the sky, but that is okay. And we'll check back in with you soon. Stay safe, everybody. Happy May 2-4, and we'll talk to you next time.